So now let's get today's event started. AI anxiety, a Google Pro separates fact from fiction with Nikki Lay. Nikki, welcome back to Training Magazine Network.
Thank you all so much for having me. I really love my friends here at Training Magazine Network and ELB for sponsoring this and bringing me on board. I know as one of the people on the teams building these chatbots and actually working on the model, my team actually helps build the models, that there is a lot of AI anxiety. What does it even mean to have AI anxiety? How do we use it? And so one of my goals was to spend time with my people in L&D to actually put some words to it and to actually lift some of the curtain and give us some practical tips to move forward and actually spend some time in here. Philip was going to find my
And
notes here. A
uh,
third were manager plus. Oh, Philip, you're my co-pilot. Tell me what's going on.
yeah, Nikki, I'm sorry, your audio dropped there just for a little bit. I was holding my breath, waiting for someone else to let me know if it was just on my side, but I think we're good now. So,
Okay. Phil
okay.
was telling me about 28% equally were manager plus. And the way I think about that is you're in a position to guide others, think about making some really tough decisions on how to move your organization forward, what to train in the future. And doing that about 28.5, the same amount we're training specialists. So actually on the ground, doing the trainings, making some decisions in that space. And another 24.76 were the instructional designers, building the coursework and doing that themselves. So with that in mind, this is the webinar that I built. So one special request I have is for you to pop your questions into the chat. Philip is going to be my co-pilot here today, actually fielding those questions, popping in and interjecting when those questions are relevant. And if you can post those reactions, that way I know if I'm on the right track and helping narrate what some of our inner AI anxieties are as we move forward. So with a little bit of work, we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to try and demystify what is going on with these AI and LLMs. They're not magic. It's not this black box that's happening where, there's actually just math and science and ones and zeros behind there. And then we're going to name the elephant of our AI anxieties and what are the risks that come out of that. And then I'm going to give you some tips on how to actually put it to use in our favor. And then give us a little time for some questions based on what we've talked about here today. So let's pull back that curtain. Meet the great Oz behind it. And this is what my team has been working on very directly to try and demystify it a little bit. So we're going to just look at some general terminology in this space. Artificial intelligence technically has been around since the 70s, the last century, as the youths would say. And it just is the capability of a machine to imitate human behavior. That's all it is. But we've had different variations and iterations on what AI really is. So you'll hear machine learning, artificial intelligence, large language models, deep learning, chatbot, generative AI, an AI agent, which is actually an AI acting on behalf of someone. So an AI agent is what a lot of the promise of what we're doing today, and a lot of what people fear is an AI acting without us intervening. So a lot of what people talk about and what a lot they fear is when they talk about job replacement is an AI agent. Oh, we'll give it all these instructions and it's making decisions on its own. So a lot of what the commercials and a lot what salespeople will tell you is an AI agent. So it'll send emails. It'll start acting all these workflows. That's an AI agent. So I just want you to know that these are some of the terminologies that will help you navigate all this deluge of information. A chatbot is what you'll see and what you'll commonly interface with when you hit a Gemini or a ChatGPT. That's an AI chatbot. You're having a conversation and it's speaking back to you. So those are technically actually different versions and different interfaces of a LLM. That's a large language model. So that's the machine that's doing all the math and the pattern recognition behind you. The chatbot and the AI agents are different interfaces on the front end of how you communicate with it. On the back end, same big giant model. Now, generative AI is a version of that big model. That's where you get your image generation. I'm going to give it some words and it's going to create an image out of that. It's going to create a video out of that. Now, generative AI is also, it's going to create a story. It's going to create these things. So that's generative AI out of that. Now, what everyone fears, and they kind of interchangeably are starting to use the term, everyone fears of, ooh, AI is going to take over. It's going to replace and it's going to coalesce with human intelligence. That's what they mean when they say AGI, artificial general intelligence. But right now, a lot of this is just very, very sophisticated pattern recognition. And that's what's happening. But it's all based on existing data. So it's replicating our existing patterns. It's based on human patterns and human behavior. And so if we have our own biases, because it's training out on the internet and it's training and what we put out there, it's going to replicate that existing pattern and doing that. So that's why you might see some of these more biased results some of these controversies arise out of that. So that's what I want you to keep in mind as you hear some of these terms. You might hear something called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Now, ChatGPT and Gemini all exist based on what it's been trained on. But you have your cloistered information in your companies, in your organizations. It's been trained on what's public and what's out there and what it has had access to. But let's say I think I saw some corporate organizations. It doesn't have access to your internal corporate documentation, your team site, and etc. This is where there's an opportunity to augment and supplement ChatGPT and Gemini. Gosh, I should be better at selling my own Google products, but I'm really not. That's not my role. Is where you would augment the existing models with your own documentation and your own set of information, your own data, and you would augment that and you would add that into the model, and then it would be able to really customize and individualize the results based on your own cloistered set of information. And this is all part of natural language processing. So there's this unique overlap between the different types of models that result in a large language model and what this unique point in time we are. And what we are leading into is prompt engineering. And that's where I'm going to teach you a little bit about prompt engineering specifically. And engineering, computer science engineering, used to be left to a very specialized field. But now that we're using natural language, this is a bit of accessibility that is open and available to all of us because we're using natural language. We're using what we speak to day here between you and I. So before, the way it would work when computers would search, we would have to do exact matching. I don't know if anyone's old enough, quite like I am, but you would have to learn things like regex to find the exact searching of words. And the way you would have to find something in a computer is they would need the, almost like Control F, it would find the exact match of words. And now we're moving to a world with these machines where we're doing things based on vibes. We're doing based on the gist of things. So the way we would communicate with machines before is that we had to have machine code. And it was like the ticker tape, tick, 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 tick. and it would take up huge rooms, huge rooms. The computers were ginormous. And then we moved to a world where we could communicate them using binary, ones and zeros. And then we're like, ooh, maybe I can get more efficient with speaking with machines by using programming languages. You have C++ or COBOL or Python. And each of these, programming languages got a little bit more efficient in the way we communicate with a computer. And now there's an opportunity to communicate with these models and these computers using human words. And that's the state in which we are at this moment. But I want to use a little bit of an analogy to think about how we can think about these models. The Library of Alexandria, which all of its books is about to be lost. And in a perfect world, we would have the time, all the infinite time to copy everything down, and the space to literally store all these books again, and the opportunity, the chance, because it's about to go up in flames, to copy everything down perfectly, word for word, and redraw every image. And once we do it, we would do a exact, perfect match. It wouldn't be like, there would be no loss. It would be perfect. But instead, we sent in a very good, a very capable intern to copy it down, but like, because we don't have the time or the space or the chance to do it again, we're doing it via shorthand. We're getting the vibes. We're getting the vibes, the gist of everything that was in the Library of Alexandria. But now that we've got this like very good, brilliant intern that we sent to the Library of Alexandria to copy everything down, when we ask the intern to, hey, what was in the biography section between these, letters A and F that had this theme, when we ask them to recite that back, they're gonna get it, most of it, pretty right, approximately right. And it's gonna be generally acceptable. But occasionally, it's gonna hallucinate. It's gonna make something up that it didn't quite remember correctly. Or it's gonna make something up, and because it didn't get an exact replica. So that's why we're getting things like hallucinations. That's why it's not good. And it's basing it on its memory of what it copied down. So that's the analogy I use when I'm explaining this. What are the potential pitfalls of having done this? It's really great. This intern, really great at doing tasks that, I would be capable of doing, but would take freaking forever to do. Hey, intern, do you mind looking through every poem ever written and in time and identifying the ones with themes of space and love that were ever written by a woman? And the intern's gonna be like, oh, okay, I can do that. Because I don't have time to do that. But it's not really thinking on its own. It's rephrasing rather than quoting it word for word. And because we all know, we're all educators in this space. It's not an indicator of genuine learning. It's not really learning these things. It took notes and it's looking for patterns. It doesn't actually know what love is, but rather the word love was used in this space. That poem, it used the word love. And I think it was written by a woman, because I don't know, but the words around it indicate that it might have been written by a woman, and it doesn't have judgment. It's looking for patterns in the text that other humans have previously written, and it's spitting it back out. Those humans could have been wrong, or could have been making a joke that it was, this poem seems like it was written by a woman. And it could reflect our own human biases, and it has no way of knowing because it isn't exercising its own judgment at this point. So these are the pitfalls of an LLM at this moment. So kind of lifting back the curtain on how these things, these AI overviews, these summaries, this chat I'm having with a chatbot is generated. And that's how it's working. It's not pulling the stuff out of thin air. It's trying to do some pattern matching. Now, that gives me anxiety. I work on this stuff and it stresses me out. But I also know the potential of having an army of interns do my legwork for me because I'm a busy lady. So let's name those elephants, because once I name them, I realize some of these elephants add to the decor. Otherwise, they're just taking up space. So some of the top AI anxieties I've noticed based on my conversations and the research I've done is, number one, I hear it all the time: job transformation or job replacement. Is this LLM, are these LLMs going to change my job, or is my job going to be replaced? And what do I do to protect myself from that? That really stresses me out. Like, it's generating words. Half of my job is typing out documents, writing learning objectives. Or if I'm working in the community, how do I help prepare people in the community? I saw a lot of librarians. How do I help prepare people in the community for how their jobs might be changed and impacted? Fear of missing out. I hear someone next to me using AI. They're talking about using AI all the time. Is everyone else doing it? What are they doing differently than I am? Am I using AI correctly? Am I doing it wrong? What is all the hype that is happening around AI? FOMO is huge. Next, for all the leaders I have in my organizations or in this call, how do I upskill my organization and prepare my organization to remain competitive? How do I make sure that my people are actively using it? Am I using the right AI? Should I be upskilling them? Should I be recruiting people with these skills? Should I be shaping and doing different organizational development differently? So should I be shifting into data skills and data analysis skills rather than the execution skills I have now? And should I be retraining the people I have on staff now to have different skills or anticipating things differently? When do I need to bring in external expertise? How do I know what I don't know? And how do I figure out when to bring someone else in? Should I be bringing someone else in for training, or should I be bringing someone else in for the technology piece? Should I be bringing in a ChatGPT? Do I need to bring in legal for governance and privacy, or do I need to be doing something else? That is really hard to navigate as well. Then ethical AI. How do I know if it's hallucinating? How do I know if I can trust this? Or how do I know if it's bringing up some weird biases that could land me in some hot water otherwise, because I'm working in a heavily regulated field, or one that requires the user's trust and perception. My brand reputation's on the line. So these are some of the major elephants that are pretty big in the room. So what do we do about these things? Here's what I'm personally doing about these specific anxiety. So about job transformation and job replacement. Very first thing, understanding the first principles about my job and understanding first principles about AI. Because actually should have flipped these, and then attending frequent trainings, because this technology is changing so frequently. I need to be aware about how it is changing frequently. So I want to be increasing my strategic skills and my judgment skills over execution, because I'm going to use and leverage this AI to do the basic tasks. Like I said, I think about it as my handy dandy army of interns. So they can do that stuff. That way I can focus on strategy, anticipating the next challenge, anticipating the next goal and opportunity, and what is changing for my business so that I can think about that. And then I can let the AI do the execution maybe, and then review whether or not that execution was appropriate and then realign. And so I'm anticipating that my entry level employees are actually going to have to upskill and become more strategic. And they're going to be doing less data entry, less things, and they're going to have to be doing more intellectual labor and less tactical labor. When it comes to fear of missing out, you really have to be more abreast. I'm signing up for newsletters, podcasts, trying to stay abreast of the changing technology, being aware, and then very intentionally creating communities of practice. I think you showing up to this training is that exact step, but creating networks and communities of practice. So other instructional designers who are in this space who want to be informed and aware, and how are you using it, what is going on, how are sharing your prompts, sharing what has been successful, being intentional about it. I always hear the term, oh, it takes a village, but very interestingly, if it takes a village, sometimes you have to be the villager in doing this. So I think that's what it means to create an intentional community of practice. When it comes to upskilling the organization, you have to be explicit in investing in training for ICs. Everyone says this, oh, we believe in L&D, we believe in training. But what does that mean? You have to create the time and space. So blocking out time on the calendar and creating the space for individuals to train, not just on compliance and regulatory materials, because if you didn't, you get in trouble, but creating time and being intentional with your training for these materials. And, and putting in enforcement for this. But also, very interestingly, change in business management training for leaders, because this is about how is their business changing? How are they supporting their staff for this? So this is actually the foundational skills, because technology is changing so rapidly. It's not the technology. I want my leaders to be being able to analyze when is there volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and how are they changing the people resourcing around that, knowing when to develop expertise and putting in experts, and choosing that versus knowing when to develop experimentation and making those trade-offs. That is a business management tactic that is not technology specific, but they need to be able to respond to this moment. And then looking at skills-based hiring and mobility as these things change is very foundational as you think about how to respond in this moment. Now, knowing when to bring in expertise, doing regular talent assessment. Where is my talent? What is going on? Is it technology that's missing? What is that? And being honest and having some really intentional time to do that talent assessment about your organization. Where are those gaps? And externally supplementing that. It's hard. It's a difficult conversation, but just doing that assessment and going, okay, are we going to internally upskill it, or is this an external moment? And then looking at doing a technology, government, process, and comms alignment analysis for that. Are those pieces in place? Are they all moving aligned together? And if not, might be a time to bring in some external expertise. Then on the ethical AI side, this is a little technical, but intentionally opting to do adversarial outputs. And we can get that into, when we get into prompt engineering, we can talk about what it means to try to get the chatbot to give you an adversarial output, asking it to look in different directions, doing an expert review. So triangulating what it gave you against other experts, other quantitative data sources, So doing a data triangulation, one of them being someone who's an expert in the field, and then developing an evaluation framework to know whether or not this aligns with your values. So these are some of the things that I'm personally doing to allay my AI anxieties. But the first step was defining what my AI anxieties were and coming up with a plan against them. So, putting it to use. This is going to be the most practical space and time against all of this. I'm going to give you an intro to prompt engineering. What is prompt engineering? It is both an art and a science because sometimes it's about word choice and thinking about it. You're going to get different outputs every time. Prompt engineering is using human language inputs to steer the model to give you the outputs that you want. Think of prompt engineering as being the model coach, so the model being Gemini or ChatGPT. You're giving it instructions, tips, guidance to give you the product you need. Again, can you be a good mentor, coach, model to your intern? Back to the intern analogy, the better you coach them, the better results they're going to give you. You don't have to be an expert in coding or machine learning to write the prompts, but you really should have experience in the domain that you're writing the prompts for. You'd probably be a really shitty baseball coach if you never picked up a baseball itself. So, the pros and cons of prompt engineering. The pros. Anyone can do it. It's super accessible. You're writing in your native language. It lowers the barrier to entry. You don't have to write code. It's really, really accessible. It's flexible and adaptable. It really lets you try new tasks, new domains without having to actually change the model, which is called fine tuning or retraining, and requires you to work with your engineers and a huge tech budget. The cons, lots of trial and error. You're going to have to rewrite these prompts and iterate, which can be time consuming. And it is sensitive. You could rewrite your prompt a few times and it's going to give you a different thing. It is not stable sometimes. And you have to just be aware that that is the case and take that with a grain of salt. So there are different kinds of prompting. It's not all the same. And there are different techniques to prompting. And I think this is the one that if you've ever just given it a shot, I'm going to test it. I'm going to interact with ChatGPT or Gemini. This is what you did. It's called zero-shot prompting. And it's kind of like Google Premium. Google Plus. I can't say Google Plus because that was a product. But it's when you didn't give it any context. You didn't give it an example. It relies on the machine to do all of the reasoning and guessing by itself. So you didn't do a ton of coaching. It's just hey, intern, here's some text, summarize it for me. Okay, I'm gonna do the best I can. I wish you gave me more context. Hey, write a paragraph about this. Translate this into Spanish for me. Classify this survey result as it's a complaint, it's positive, or it's neutral. Explain photosynthesis to me. Okay, I guess I'll go off and go figure this out on my own. Compare strategy to tactics in leadership training to me. Imagine if you did that to an intern and they'd be like, I guess. Question, you gave them very little and they're expected to give you an answer. That's zero shot, almost like zero context prompting. Will it give you something? Yes. It's quick. It's going to be lower accuracy. Not your best bet, but you can refine from here. So that's what we call zero shot prompting. You can move on to something called few shot prompting. I like to say the magic words in the following steps. You don't have to cram your entire prompt into one single input. You can use the phrase in the following steps to signal to the model that you're going to give it more information. So you can give it multiple examples, be really descriptive, use multiple prompts, and you're giving it extra context to reason out what it should be giving back to you. So, hey intern, I'm going to give you survey feedback. This example is classified as like instructor, and this example is classified as critique, and this example is classified as like positive. So in the following steps, I'm going to give you some text and classify it into this format and categories that I previously gave it to you. You can see how that's like a little bit more descriptive and more helpful to the intern. And like, okay, now I have something to go off of. Now I have some examples that I can work with versus like that one you gave me before. So you can see how we're giving it a few shots, a few examples to work off of now. It's a little bit more, but the trade-off, that took you more time to do. And you might have to refine that even more. Now, this next one is called chain of thought prompting. And I call my magic words step by step. By appending the magic phrase step by step, it signals the model to apply chain of thought reasoning. So one thing you can test, you can do it right now, is I went to the market and bought 10 apples. I gave 2 apples to the neighbor and 2 apples to the repairman. I then went and bought 5 more apples and ate 1. How many apples did I remain with? I challenge you to do that yourself and give me an instant answer. Versus if you actually like sat down and you're like, okay, I'm going to write it out and do it. So by saying in one shot that versus adding on the word, let's think step by step, it's going to give you a different response. By just adding that, let's think step by step, it's going to, you prompt it to respond to you and process and reason through your requests differently. So it's just a slightly different phrase. And it's interesting to see how telling the model and coaching your intern, or even think about like if you have kids, coaching your kid, be like, hey, I know that was a lot of information. Think through it step by step. That was a really hard math problem. Let's think through it step by step. It's going to elicit a different response. So there are some technical pitfalls here. Here is some text that is going to help you create high fidelity, thematically organized notes from meetings. By asking it to arrange it into themes and then expand on the themes. One thing that you should be aware of is there are input limits and output limits to every single model. They are different. Some will let you input a lot of information, but only output a little bit. And those are called token limits. For this conversation, you should be aware that one word is called a token. And those tokens limits may be different depending on the model, may be different depending on your payment plan. They may let you pay more to get more tokens, etc. So the way that you can get around that is by intentionally telling the model to group it by theme, and then in the next prompt, okay, now expand on theme 1. So there are ways to work around token limits and to actually get it to think and reason slightly differently. So by being very specific about what you want it to generate, you can help generate really organized notes in doing so. And this will all be in the handout for you to reference. So I'm going to give you 3 very practical tips to create a good prompt. So my first one is to create a prompt using a structured anatomy. And this is the one that I had my fiance review this presentation last night, and he's an attorney. He doesn't use this at all. He doesn't work in this field. And he's like, oh, I can use this. This is practical. Like, I'm going to print this up and put it next to my desk. Is create prompts using a structured anatomy. You give it a persona. You're a senior user experience designer at a top technology, like, who are you? What mindset intern? Like, put yourself in the mindset of this. What context do you need to know? A user needs help finding it. Then you give it instruction for this task, and then what format do you want your output to be in? Format this output into a table with columns in this. Imagine if I was an intern and my boss had the time to sit down and give me this clear instructions on everything they wanted me to do. I would be golden. This is the dream. So here's my anatomy of a structured prompt. My persona. You set the stage with tone and voice. Context helps the model understand the constraint and details of what you're asking it. Instruction, describe in detail whether you want it as a step-by-step list or mapping out the user's experience and mindset. I could see IDs really being handy. This being handy for IDs, examples. Use specific examples as much as you can. When generating images, I actually like to have the model think through, hey, describe the inspiration, other similar artists, things before it generates so I have it describe in words, its inspiration, the tone, the setting, etc. Of the image is going to create verbal in words first before it generates the actual image. And I find that it's quite a bit more accurate. And the format. So how do you want it to be format? Because I don't want paragraphs and then having to rewrite it into bullet points. That's a big old waste of my time. So if I just take the time to write the prompt, it makes my life a ton easier. Secondly, feed the model massive amounts of data because it exists. I have data in all sorts of formats all over the place. Tips for gathering that data, I want quality over quantity. So I load the data in large chunks and just, I know this is a good document. I'm going to copy and paste it in. And I can save that for later because I load it in with hundreds of thousands of words. I copy and paste that in. I can share that because it lets me save it. There's a little share link and I can save that in my bookmarks or something. And I won't need to reload it and redo that over and over and over again. It's almost like I'm stepping back into my own mindset or custom AI that I've developed. But be careful, again, about that source material bias. I don't want random Reddit stuff in my corporate documentation. And I try to order the content from basic to advanced. Some of my potential source material, training manuals, existing coursework I've developed. That's good context. If I was bringing on an intern, read all this stuff before you come to me. Here's stuff that was developed previously before you build a new course. Look at the stuff that was developed in the past. Product documentation, sales material. Some of you are doing internal training for other employees. Some of you are doing stuff, developing material for the community to teach the community how to utilize AI. All of this is relevant. Meeting notes, internal team sites, business requirement documents. It's all useful information. So here's an example of feeding the model massive amounts of data. I'm going to ask for your help with writing a task. First, I want to load in a lot of business requirements information for you to draw upon. The business requirements document is so extensive, so I need to load it in. I'm talking like I'm talking to an intern. I'm going to load it in several chunks all at once. Sit tight while I load it in. I don't want you to do anything. Just acknowledge that you got it. Here it is. Here's the next bit, and just keep going. You can talk to it like it's a person. I have a friend who asks it to build her weekly shopping lists and recipes for her family, and they have dietary restrictions. And she refers to it as bestie. Hey, bestie, I need a shopping list for this, and my family has these dietary restrictions. You can do that. You are a registered dietitian who is very informed with this, and my family has that. there are opportunities to do that. But, ooh, I didn't update that. My top 3 practical tip. Decompose really large tasks. Large tasks, break them into small chunks. Again, it's an intern. Small prompts give you more control, which gives you better accuracy. Understanding how to break down really complex tasks is essential for effectively interacting with it. So smaller prompts gives you more control over its output, and you can provide tailored instructions for each step. Proceeding in smaller chunks lets you course correct, like, hey, and you can give it direct feedback. Hey, what you generated was wrong in this way. Like, this is how it was wrong, and this is where you went wrong. Try again. Is something I have said to a chatbot over and over and over. Models have, like I said, have limitations on the amount of text it can produce. So tell it to go in, generate in bullet points, and then go, great, I like that. Expand on bullet point 1, because they have those token limits on how much they can put into that output window at once. So I saw that Philip has been pulling in your questions into a little side panel for me to answer. But I want to make sure we're hitting on the questions that are useful and relevant to your life. So please, please, please continue to put them in. Philip, if you don't mind telling me which ones do you think are most urgent and pressing to answer right away?
You know, a lot of questions you touched on and even others answered for like specific resources and alike. But uh, let's start with, and these, by the way, go, the last one was the most recent, and then the first one was the first question within your presentation. But Jessica's resonated with a lot of people. Can AI tell us when it's hallucinating, or give us at least a percent confidence in its own answers?
It cannot and will not tell you when it's hallucinating. Because a core piece of the technical infrastructure is something called a neural network, which is literally designed after the human brain's neural networks and like the shape of neurons. So it doesn't know when it's hallucinating, because it truly believes, and I don't love these terms, I will fully admit, it truly believes that it is truth. So, but it can give you a percent confidence in its answers. So different tools will expose that information to you at different levels of visibility. I believe Google's does that, and it will try to source some of its information. And I have access to different tools because I'm internal. So I don't use the production tools, but it will source it and give you a confidence. But at any point, I will often tell it, it's like, that's not real. That doesn't exist. Try again. And it'll apologize to me and tell me like, oh, I made a mistake, and pull a different response from that. And what we're finding with youth and kids is they are trusting these systems less when they are interacting with it, because they can see the validity going down. And so they know how they're getting better at identifying what is incorrect in its responses, because they first test it with things that they know is true, and then they're going back and revalidating it. So that's why it's important to order it from most basic to most advanced and build upon. And so I think that's why my team is taking on user trust and regulation, is to find ways to improve that as much as possible.
And thank you, Nikki. And Ellen said, pretty please. So I pushed her question to next here. Um, do you have suggested or recommended newsletters, or I think, she means resources that kind of keep up with this, that she can refer to?
I do. I have to pull it up. I find myself really hanging in the ethical AI spaces. There's one out of Montreal and out of the University of Montreal that I believe gets sent every month, that I will post on my LinkedIn as a follow-up to this, and I can send to you, Philip. and doing all that, because I think the reliability, the validity, and it's the trust in it is, if we don't get that right, what's the point of
Mhm.
all of us doing this?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And Sherry asks, what's the best way to teach coach an AI tool, especially when you know that something it just gave you is wrong?
I would, how to teach coach it is like, oh, I don't want to seem paternalistic, but I often think about it like, and this might come from my background as a high school teacher, but I just go, hey, you got this wrong, and you got this wrong in this way. So let's try this again. And that's why I don't love using AI as a super powered Google question and answer system. If that were the case, I just use Google. I don't want it to be my question and answer fact checker. Hey, I'm searching for this, bringing me back that. I like it to do summaries. I like it to do things that take a lot of my time and that I wish I had someone else do for me. So if it is, um, I like it for a different set of tasks. I find it as a supplement to Google, not as a replacement. And so I'm not looking for it to do fact checking and doing all that. So if a high school student, came to me and said, "Oh, I looked up the facts about this war and got them all wrong," and be like, "You fundamentally misunderstood the question. You fundamentally misunderstood what was going on here." And you got it wrong. And let's understand why you got it wrong and try again. Like, you got factuality wrong versus then your analysis, is where I would go back to it. And I think that's where we're at a tension point on the utility and the use case of AI. And I think this is, the AI overviews. It's intended to shortcut how much analysis, how many sites we have to dig in, but um, the AI overview at the top of a Google search is intended to summarize and get the almost the mean average of what is all in all of the search results. And um, you know, I think about the intern like reading through all of the search results and summarizing it for me at the top is what the AI overview is. But I'm just like, if it smells off, it smells fishy, I'm gonna check one or two below, and make sure that it's still accurate. I still have to exercise my human judgment at this point. I'm not gonna take everything as automatic fact.
Great. Thank you, Nikki, for that clarification. And also, I'm going to combine two questions here. Danielle and Marissa kind of are both expressing frustrations with using AI.
Yeah.
Danielle says in the chatbot I'm building, when I prompt the LLM to role play with me, but let it begin, role play with me, but let me begin the conversation. Sometimes when I use the same prompt, let me speak first. Sometimes it begins first anyway. But and only sometimes is it hallucinating, or how do I avoid that? That's the first
Uh,
frustration.
there's a different technical term for that. It not hallucinating, but I don't know the term off the top of my head. The way to avoid that would be, that's a model deficiency, and it would be to use a different prompt and to continue to correct that. So that is something in the model that is leaking, is what I would do, call that, and say like, um, use a different prompt than let me speak first, and just again, imagine if it was like, hey, you keep interrupting me, do not do that, and like try a different set of prompts on that, because it's not learning. The model is, when you are, essentially what you are doing when you are prompt engineering and writing a prompt is you're fine tuning, you're going into the model and you're making changes, you're going in it, and it's not learning from when you say let me speak that. So you need to try a different set of code and different set of things to fine tune that model in doing that.
I see. And then Marissa says, I have had had frustrating sessions with Chat GPT where I ask it, for example, give me a code for something. It will give two criteria and it will seem to address me as if to say, you've considered the second criteria. And then have you considered, you haven't considered, excuse me, the second criteria. It will apologize and then give me a solution that only addresses the second criteria. It will cycle through and consistently apologizing and for only addressing one of the criteria. Any tips?
Yeah, I would say it's losing its memory, so it's only addressing. You have better memory. You're remembering the entire conversation, and you're saying you're only addressing the second criteria, and it's readdressing just the last thing you. It's not. So I would dump that and start the conversation, but um, start with a longer prompt and a little more precise prompt because what you're doing is you have a very short prompt without a lot of detail. So start again, like with more specificity, more context, and saying, you know, sorry, I think I lost the exact text where you had it. But go into a little more
Oh,
detail.
yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine, Philip. Into a little more detail because it's apologizing and it's only responding to the very last prompt you got it. And so go back in and say, like, you need to address these things. You have already tried these things. You're not doing these things, and give it a little more specificity, a little more reasoning and examples to work with. And so it can go back around and kind of give it a new starting point to grab onto versus having it to try and remember its chain of where it's coming through and trying some of those words, like think through it step by step, you know, try some of those key terms versus it trying to chain together through multiple prompts.
Thank you. And Danielle says, can you talk more about how to avoid anxiety with AI taking over all jobs? I'm struggling to understand which jobs will be left.
Um, I'm going to be honest and vulnerable, and I don't mean to be dismissive with this. It is because I am working in the field and I work with it on a daily basis. I don't I anticipate it transforming quite a bit of jobs. I don't anticipate it taking jobs in the next 5 years. I anticipate it transforming very many jobs. I think the difference between you getting a job and someone else getting the job is the familiarity with the tools and your ability to do it. So if someone's like, I've never worked with it, and someone's like, I have played with it. I think that is going to be a difference maker in job mobility and in doing all of that. I think a key thing in all this is your ability to be strategic, your ability to be exercise a lot of judgment, to know how to utilize the tools, how to use them strategically, how to spend your time wisely. So where I'm seeing it, like for example, I'm I anticipate for software engineers who are highly paid knowledge employees who, let alone in other fields, they are going to spend a lot less time writing code, but a lot more time editing, critiquing, reviewing, and making determinations on where to deploy AI to be the ones to write code. So you're not going to be, maybe writing learning objectives, creating the course, but you're going to be spending your time deciding which courses need to be written. You're going to be deciding how the courses are written. You're going to be the ones making you're going to be doing a lot more intellectual labor about making decisions on how to deploy things rather than being the ones doing the actual deployment. And I think, spending your time investing in those kinds of skills in terms of judgment, strategy, decision making is going to be a worthy investment because jobs will change, but they are not going to be eliminated. And for every instructional design job that changes, every job above that will also have to be transformed. So I anticipate a lot of job transformation, but not job elimination. And I don't anticipate it doing that rapidly because of the low trust, and low uh, stability of the current model development. And also very frankly, cost. These tools are expensive. They're very costly, to deploy and maintain, and the change management of adoption is very, very, very slow. And the markets aren't supporting that at the moment. So that is why I have a little bit of reassurance. That's the human side of it, the like just day to day reality of getting these into companies, everywhere, is like just getting companies onto Word away from typewriters took freaking forever, let alone something like an AI.
Right. And I'm going to sneak in just a couple of thoughts here. And I know we're up against the hour here, but Sarah early on said, I feel like AI takes away some of our creativity. What do you think about this? And Meredith says, I find it interesting that AI imitates human behavior rather than human thinking. Is there a reason for this?
I'm going to start with Sarah's. Uh, Early research shows that artists, after interacting with AI, so they did a study where the control group, um, they had two artists. The control group interacted, with the AI image generator, and then the one, or sorry, one did not and one did. The experiment did, and they found that post interaction, the artists were less creative. And so it all depends on what you mean by creative. Some artists will use it as inspiration and then, change and tweak. And because it is easier to iterate, there's a faster development cycle. Others find that is incredibly limiting. I don't know if it makes us less creative. It's so early days that who knows how this is going to affect us, affect our brains, and affect our interactions. But I think there's a lot left to be wanted. Um, and then I think the other question was, Phil, do you
Behave. Yeah. I'm sorry. Let me go back here.
know?
The two, that Meredith said she finds it interesting AI imitates human behavior rather than human thinking.
I think that is the shift that they are trying to achieve. So if you look at OpenAI, Google, all those who are developing the models, that's the change that they are chasing. Right now, it is only capable of imitating human behavior. What they're trying to achieve and the barrier that they are trying to break, they're all in a race for, is the shift from behavior to human thinking. And the first person to do that is going to make a lot of money and also face a lot of ethical questions on what happens when it can actually actively mimic human thinking. And I think that's what they're attempting to do. And I don't know what what we are going to face when it comes to that. My background is in machine learning ethics, and that's why I have a lot of individual personal AI anxiety. And the more I learn about it, is what are the individual things I can do to address and allay those AI anxieties, to make sure that I am personally more resilient as these things change.
Nikki, thank you so much. And she shared her LinkedIn URL, and go ahead and reach out to Nikki also directly. She's also nicely shared her email. These are in the handouts for today. And Nikki, I'll send you the unanswered questions to help you develop future content,
Yeah.
also, and maybe respond to some of them where you'd like to. But we need more time with you, Nikki. We need to have you back. This isn't slowing down, is it? So thank you so much. I know our members really, really appreciate it. Please rate today's session, put in your most valuable takeaways. Also, you can put in what more topics you'd like, even a deeper dive here, whatever you'd like to hear more about. We'll give that to Gary Van Antwerp, our VP of our communities. You can print out a certificate of participation also and get an ATD credit or certification or recertification. Someone mentioned HRCI. You can still print out a certificate of participation and then submit it to them. It's up to them as to whether or not they will honor it for credit. But ATD does, again, for certification and recertification. Nikki, well done. Thank you so much for a fantastic session here today. I did put in chat also where you can get more tools and be more resources and help getting AI ready with today's sponsor, ELB Learning. Thank you, ELB Learning, for making today's event possible. Nikki, you're no longer on video, but trust me, you're still there. So I just wanted to say thank you again for a fantastic session here today. I know people will want to share this recording with others. It'll post a little bit later today. And please invite others to join our community. Basic membership is free in Training Magazine Network. And there you go. You can find out more about membership and share it with all of your friends, colleagues, and then get people to join us in all of the great content that we offer here at Training Magazine Network. Thank you, Nikki, again, and Jen in the background there with ELB Learning. Thank you so much for a fantastic session today.